everyone. Today we're going to chat about the difference in 1099 contractors and W-2 employees, the difference between a sole proprietor, an LLC, and an S-corp, and finally what a DBA is and when you need one. One thing to note, I am not an accountant, I'm not a tax professional, I'm not anything of the like. So this video is for informational purposes only. This is not advice, so please consult your accountant for advice regarding any personal or business needs, as every situation is very different. Okay, first let's clarify some definitions. 1099s might be referred to simply as 1099, 1099 employees, 1099 contractors, or independent contractors interchangeably. Another term you're going to learn shortly is sole proprietor, which is also the same thing. Traditional employees, who are W-2s, are the most familiar type of employee, which are usually just called employees. Oh, and if you're wanting information on LLC versus S-corp and what a DBA is, stay tuned till the end. Let's talk about employees for a second. An employee is defined as a worker who gets paid an hourly wage or an annual salary for a set job. Not all hourly workers are employees, which we'll see in a second. Employees are generally defined by the higher level of control that the employer has over the details of the employee's work. So what is a 1099 then? This is an employment classification used by the IRS for tax purposes. It means someone who is contracted but not an employee. Contractors may be for one single job, a set number of hours during a time period, or ongoing work. This tax classification refers to how you and your employer are taxed and what the employer can dictate. I'll try to keep these examples as simplified as possible. As a 1099 contractor, you are in control of your work, what tasks you do, and how you do them. All of this is, of course, negotiated with the employer first. For example, I owned and am still a silent partner in a wellness center. We used to hire 1099s for most services, including yoga, massage, aesthetics, and many other things. By IRS rules, the contractor has to provide all their own tools and products to complete their contracted services. We couldn't dictate their hours, but they were agreed upon in our contract, and we could not dictate how they did their services, such as what techniques or products they used. Now, this is very gray area and has been debated for years. This doesn't mean you can't work in or on software that the employer gives you access to if you're working virtually. Unfortunately, many employers are actually in violation of these rules in some way, and we definitely were at one time, which is why we converted everyone to employees eventually. For in-person services, these rules are much more difficult, as employers usually have specific standards, products, and techniques they want their staff to use, so clients receive a similar quality service. In the online world, this is not so much an issue. A client may hire you to do all their patient intakes weekly at X dollars per hour or X dollars per intake. They give you access to their software and give you any pertinent information. Then you provide them with an invoice for your hours or number of intakes for the agreed upon time period. As a 1099, the services that you will provide are discussed and agreed upon before you start. But that doesn't mean you can't do other things for them. It just means that you don't have to. You can say no, unlike an employee. Many contractors are pretty versatile though, and happy to do whatever an employer needs within their scope, of course. Now let's talk about pay and taxes, because it's very different from traditional employees. First off, you set your rates, but that doesn't mean an employer can't offer you a rate or that you negotiate. It just means that you're a little more in control. To get paid, you provide the client with an invoice, either after a job, weekly, bi-weekly, or monthly, whatever time frame you agree upon, that includes all of your hours and/or the work you completed with the rate for each if you charge different rates for things. You can relate this to a handyman. You hire them to do XYZ and they provide you with an invoice of what you owe after. You're paid like a business, but you don't have to be a business. This brings up the question, do you need to form a business? No, you don't. For tax purposes, 1099 contractors are considered sole proprietors. Sole proprietors and single-member LLCs are taxed the same. A sole proprietor is a business classification for tax purposes for individuals, but does not have to register as one with the state. It's basically a person who isn't a business but operates as a business for tax purposes. You work under your own Social Security number instead of using an EIN like a business does. An LLC, or a limited liability company, may have more than one member. Member is another term for owner, by the way. But if you have just one, they are considered a single member LLC, and as stated, are viewed the same as 1099 sole proprietorships for taxes. The difference is in the liability. A 1099 contractor has zero protections, meaning if anyone sued you, they're suing you personally and all your assets are liable. If you have an LLC, your personal assets are protected and only the business assets are liable. This is why, for any clinical activity, a business is always recommended, even if you're a single person show. So, how do taxes differ for employees versus a 1099? As you know, employees have taxes taken straight out of their paychecks, and you're limited to what you can write off on your taxes at the end of the year. However, as a 1099, the employer pays no taxes or fees on your behalf, and no taxes or fees are taken out of your paycheck. Nothing. Nada. So this is something you have to plan for, preferably well in advance. I recommend having a separate bank account where you automatically put 20 to 30% of all your income you receive as a 1099 to save for the end of year taxes. That doesn't mean you will owe all of that at the end of the year though, because as a 1099, you are taxed the same as a single member LLC, which means you can write off a lot of your business expenses to ease this tax burden. S-corp versus LLC. There's a lot of confusion surrounding this one. It's important to understand that an S-corp is not a business structure. It is a tax classification. As an LLC or a corporation, which are both legal business entities, you can elect to be taxed as an S-corp if you meet certain criteria. You can't elect to be an S-corp if you operate as a sole proprietor, which again is a 1099 contractor. Electing to be taxed as an S-corp is helpful for multi-member businesses that have more than 2 owners and are usually pretty complex. You can have up to 100 shareholders and even common stock as an S-corp. This is something you should definitely consult your accountant on before making any decisions, especially if you would like to pay yourself as an owner employee and have taxes taken out of your paycheck. To operate as a sole proprietor, a 1099 contractor does not need to register with anyone. But if you choose to do an LLC or a corporation, you will need to register with your state, which requires some forms and yearly payment. You do not need anyone to do this for you. It's very simple and pretty quick to do. You can definitely pay someone if you like, but I've set up a lot of LLCs and they don't take much time. All the forms are digital and pretty straightforward, so save the money. Once you've set up your LLC, you can then elect to be taxed as an S-corp later if you choose, which you can do by submitting a form to the IRS, or your accountant can help you with that. But again, consult your accountant before doing this, as it may not actually be financially beneficial for you. There is one thing we need to discuss: DBAs. A DBA refers to doing business as. These forms are filed with the state and are only needed in certain circumstances. If you have an LLC but would like your business to go by a different name than the registered LLC is under, you would file a DBA. For example, if your legal business name is Stacy Lee LLC, but you'd like to go by Bloom Wellness instead, then you would file a DBA as Bloom Wellness. If you operate as a sole proprietor, which again is what a 1099 contractor is classified as for tax purposes, and don't have a registered LLC, your sole proprietorship name is automatically your legal name because it is tied to your social security number. So mine would be Allison Sunderman. Let's say I don't want to file for an LLC, but I want to have a business name other than my own. I would then file a DBA to use that name instead. Okay, I just threw a ton of information at you in this video, so please drop any questions or comments below, and don't forget to hit the like button if you found this information helpful, and please subscribe, as I'll be posting more videos soon.